Night came slowly to Greyridge. The sky was dark and heavy, like it was holding secrets. A cold wind moved through the trees, and even the birds stopped singing. In a small house at the edge of town, Mr. Elijah sat at his old wooden table. Across from him sat the stranger, the young man he once saved in war. His name was Reed, though Elijah hadn't heard that name in many years. They sat in silence for a while. The room was dim, lit by one flickering lamp. Reed looked around. The place was simple. A few photos on the wall, a couch with patches, an old bookshelf. Nothing about it showed who Elijah really was. "You live like a ghost," Reed finally said. "I am one," Elijah replied, without emotion. "The world buried me a long time ago." Reed pulled a folder from his coat and placed it on the table. Elijah looked at it, but didn't touch it. "What's in there?" he asked. "Proof," Reed said. "Names, faces, locations. They'd been moving in silence, just like before. But this time, it's not a mission. It's revenge." Elijah's jaw tightened. "How long?" "They've been watching you for 3 months," Reed answered. "I found out last week. They don't just want to kill you. They want to erase your name completely." Elijah stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the empty road. "They already did," he said quietly. "Long ago." Reed stayed silent. Elijah's voice broke the silence again. "You ever wonder why I disappeared after the war?" Reed nodded. "Everyone thought you died. HQ said you deserted, but I knew they lied." Elijah turned around, eyes burning with memories. "We were betrayed by our own. You saw the signs, didn't you? The broken comms, the missing maps, the trap at Hill 29. "I remember," Reed whispered. "You carried me out of that fire." "They wanted me dead that night," Elijah said, "because I knew the truth, because I refused to lie." He walked back to the table and finally opened the folder. Inside were photographs, black and white, grainy, but clear enough. Faces. One of them made Elijah stop breathing for a second. A man with cold eyes, a scar down the side of his cheek. Marcos. Reed nodded. "He's alive, and he's in Greyridge." Elijah closed the folder. "That man was my second in command," he said slowly. "He knew everything, and when the mission failed, he told them I was the traitor." Reed's voice turned cold, but it was him. "Yes," Elijah said. "He sold intel to the enemy. I tried to stop him, but he was faster. He buried me." They both fell silent again. Outside, a branch hit the window. The sound was sharp. Both men looked up, alert. "Just a tree." Reed leaned forward. "We can stop them, sir, but we need to be ready. I've placed surveillance around your home. If they come, we'll know." Elijah sat back down. "They won't send men in suits. Not first. They'll send whispers, fear, then they'll come for my body, and then my name." He picked up a small wooden box from under the table. Inside was a black knife, smooth and deadly. He ran his fingers across it. Reed recognized it immediately. "That's your blade," he whispered. "You haven't used that since." "Since I swore I'd never kill again," Elijah said. He closed the box. "But if they come through that door," he added, "I'll remind them who I was." Back in town. At the diner, Todd sat alone. His hands trembled slightly. Jenny poured him another cup of coffee but didn't speak. "Did you see how that guy looked at me?" Todd asked, trying to laugh, like I was some joke. "You were," Jenny said sharply. Todd looked up, surprised. "That old man you mocked," she continued. "He saved people. He fought for a country that forgot him. And you treated him like dirt." Todd looked down, shame in his eyes. "I didn't know." "You didn't care," Jenny replied. Outside, 2 black cars slowly passed by the diner. Their windows were dark, too dark. Elijah waited inside. Reed stood in the shadows, weapon ready. Marcos knocked gently. "Elijah," he called softly. "Old friend, I've come to say goodbye." Elijah opened the door. The two men faced each other, years of betrayal between them. Marcos chuckled. "You look good, for a ghost." Elijah said nothing. "You were always the hero," Marcos continued. "But heroes don't win. Liars do. That's why I'm still here." He pulled a gun slowly. "Say your last words." Elijah's voice was steady. "You first." Bang! It was Reed, from behind. Marcos dropped his gun and fell to his knees. Elijah stepped forward. "You wanted to erase my name," he said. "But now, the world will remember it. You tried to bury me in silence. But I brought the truth back." Marcos gasped, bleeding. Reed looked down at him. "That's for Hill 29. Marcos closed his eyes. And it was over. Later that night, the police came quietly. Reed had already called a contact in military intelligence. They took the bodies, cleaned up the scene. No news, no questions. Just like old times. Jenny stood outside the diner the next morning and watched the sun rise. Elijah walked by slowly, wearing the same coat and hat. He paused. Jenny smiled. "Morning, Mr. Elijah." He looked at her for a moment, then gave the smallest nod. "Morning," he said. And for the first time, someone said his name with pride. Grayridge was quiet, too quiet. But Elijah Briggs felt it, the calm before the storm. He had lived through wars. He had seen betrayal. He had been forgotten, hunted, and nearly erased from history. But now, he had something he hadn't felt in years. A reason to fight. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protecting what mattered. Home. Truth. People. The warning comes true. 3 nights after the strange letter arrived, a dark van rolled into Grayridge. It parked 2 blocks from the diner. No lights. No sound. Inside were 5 men. Cold. Silent. Armed. Their leader was a man named Kane, a former Black Ops commander turned mercenary. He had one mission: eliminate Elijah Briggs, leave no trace. But Kane made a mistake. He thought Elijah was alone. At the diner, Elijah sat at his booth, drinking coffee. Jenny walked over, nervous. "Are you sure we're safe here?" Elijah looked up calmly. "They'll come. And when they do, they'll regret it." Outside, Reed parked his car across the street. He had set up cameras, alarms, and traps around the diner. Hidden weapons, silent alerts. Captain Nolan, still healing, stayed in a nearby hotel, guarded by 2 agents. Everyone knew something was coming. Only the town didn't. But Elijah had a plan. Midnight. The power in Grayridge flickered. Then it went out. Total darkness. Elijah stood up and opened the back door of the diner. Wind blew in. He closed his eyes and listened. Footsteps. One by one. He turned to Jenny. "Stay here, no matter what." She nodded, eyes full of fear and trust. Elijah walked out into the night. The fight. Kane's men moved in fast. 2 from the alley, 1 through the back, 2 from the roof. But Elijah wasn't just ready. He was waiting. He struck the first man with silent speed, disabling him before he even saw the attack coming. Reed engaged another, using smoke grenades and flash traps. Suddenly, the quiet town turned into a silent war zone. Elijah fought like a man possessed. Calm. Sharp. Every move had purpose. Every breath was measured. Kane, watching through binoculars, finally spoke into his radio. "Fall back. He's not just a target. He's a ghost." But it was too late. One by one, his men fell. Then Kane heard a whisper behind him. "You picked the wrong town." It was Elijah. Kane turned, swung. Too slow. Elijah hit hard, knocking him down. Kane reached for a blade, but Elijah kicked it away. "Who sent you?" Elijah demanded. Cain spit blood. You think taking me out stops it? This goes higher. Deeper. You opened a door that won't close. Elijah didn't flinch. Then I'll be the one standing in the doorway. And with one final strike, Cain was out cold. Morning light. By dawn, it was over. The mercenaries were captured. Cain was taken into custody. Their communications were traced. Names were found. Hidden files uncovered. The network that tried to erase Elijah, exposed at last. Captain Nolan gave a full statement. With evidence. With truth. Congress opened an investigation. Medals were returned. But more importantly, so was honor. A hero's return. 1 week later, Grey Ridge held a public event. Flags waved. People cheered. The mayor stood at a podium. Today, we honor a man not for one act of bravery, but for a lifetime of courage. Elijah stood beside him, silent as always. Then a young girl from the crowd walked up to him. Are you really the man from the stories? She asked. Elijah knelt down, smiled, and said, I'm just a man who didn't stop when it got hard. The crowd went silent. And then they clapped. Long, loud, real. The diner booth. That evening, Elijah returned to the diner. Jenny had saved his booth. He sat down. She brought his coffee. Reed joined them, tired but smiling. Do you think it's over? Jenny asked. Elijah looked out the window. No, but now they know. I'm not afraid. Jenny placed her hand on his. You're not alone anymore. Elijah looked around. The booth was full. The town was safe. His name was clear. And for the first time in a long, long time, he was home. The diner had never been this quiet before. The stranger sat beside Mr. Elijah, and his presence was like a storm waiting to happen. People didn't know whether to stay seated or walk out. Something in his eyes kept them frozen. Calm, deep, and dangerous. Like a man who had seen death and returned from it. Todd sat back in his seat, but his eyes kept darting toward Elijah and the stranger. Who is this guy? He muttered. The stranger didn't answer him. He wasn't here for them. He leaned closer to Elijah and said, Sir, I didn't expect to find you like this. I thought they said you were dead. Elijah gave a small smile. Dead inside, maybe. But my heart still works. The stranger nodded. I was just a young soldier when I first saw you. I didn't know what courage meant until that night. People nearby leaned in slightly, curious now. Elijah sighed. That night is long gone. But the danger isn't, the stranger whispered. He opened his coat and showed something under it. A folded photo. Elijah looked at it. His face changed. It was a picture from the war. A group of soldiers standing in the snow. One man stood at the center. Tall, proud, his face dark and calm. Elijah. Much younger. Stronger. His hand rested on a boy's shoulder. The boy was now the man sitting beside him. You kept that? Elijah asked. I kept it because you kept me alive. The man said. Why are you here now? Elijah asked quietly. The stranger's voice became serious. Because they're back. The ones who betrayed you. The ones who left you to die. They think you're weak now. And they think I'm too late. Elijah's hand gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles turned white. I hoped I'd never hear that name again. You will, said the stranger. Tonight. Todd stood up suddenly. Okay, what is this? Some movie? This is a diner, not a battlefield. Take your drama somewhere else. The stranger turned slowly toward Todd. He stood up. He was taller than Todd. Stronger. And colder. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A military patch. This patch was earned during Operation Silent Echo, he said. Only 6 of us survived. We survived because of him. He pointed to Elijah. While others ran, he stood and fought. And you, his voice dropped. You spilled coffee on him. Todd's face turned red. I didn't mean to laugh. The stranger asked. Didn't mean to call them useless. He stepped forward, slow and calm. Let me explain something, sir. If this man ever lifted his hand against you, you wouldn't even see it coming. You'd be on the floor before you took your next breath. The entire diner was still. The stranger turned back to Elijah. I'm not here to scare children. I'm here to protect you. Because tonight, they plan to finish what they started. Elijah took a deep breath. His eyes looked tired but sharp. I'm not afraid. I know, the stranger said. Jenny, the waitress, stepped forward. Who are they? What's happening? The stranger looked at her kindly. Men who were once in the shadows. Criminals. Spies. Soldiers without honor. Years ago, they betrayed our unit, stole intel, and tried to kill everyone who knew the truth. Elijah stopped them, but at a price. Elijah looked down. They burned my name, said I deserted, took everything from me. And now they want to erase what's left, the stranger added. A cold silence filled the diner. Todd finally sat down, quiet now. The others looked at Elijah with new eyes. Elijah stood up slowly. His body moved like a man twice his age, but there was still strength in his steps. He looked at the stranger. You still remember how to use a knife? The stranger smiled. Only the way you taught me. Elijah nodded. Then let's go home. We have a long night ahead. As they walked toward the door, Jenny asked, what should we do? Elijah turned slightly. Lock your doors. Stay out of sight. If you see men in black, don't talk. Don't move. Then he walked out with the stranger, just as the clouds outside began to darken. Back inside, no one spoke. Even Todd looked shaken now. Mike whispered, you think it's real? That war stuff? Jenny didn't answer. She just stared out the window and said softly, that wasn't just a stranger. That was a soldier. And Elijah, he's not who we thought he was. Outside, thunder rolled in the sky. The town of Grey Ridge was quiet again, but something had changed. The old man wasn't alone anymore. And tonight, shadows were coming. Elijah Briggs thought the war was over. Grey Ridge was quiet again. The sun rose gently over the hills. The diner smelled of fresh coffee and warm bread. And Elijah, for the first time in years, had peace in his chest. But deep down, he knew peace was never permanent. Not for men like him. Not when there were still shadows walking free. A ghost from the past. One cold morning, Elijah walked down to the mailbox. Inside was a small black envelope. No stamp, no name, just a symbol. The same burned coin mark from Cain's letter. He froze, took a breath, opened it. Inside was a single photo. A boy in chains, dirty, scared. And on the back, one sentence written in red ink. You saved one truth. How many more will you let die? The meeting. Reed met Elijah at the diner 10 minutes later. Jenny brought 2 cups of coffee, sensing something was wrong. Reed read the message. That mark, it belongs to an old program, darker than Black Ops. They were erased years ago. Elijah shook his head. No, they just went underground. Reed leaned forward. You think it's real? Elijah nodded. That boy's eyes. They're real. Someone's still running secret prisons, still hurting the innocent. This doesn't end unless someone ends it. Jenny whispered, you said it was over. Elijah looked at her, and his voice was quiet. I said I was home. I never said I was done. Digging deeper. Over the next week, Reed and Elijah worked in silence. They contacted old allies, unlocked files that weren't supposed to exist, followed whispers across forums and encrypted servers. They found a name, The Forge, an organization hidden in shadows, run by ex-generals, black-budget contractors, and private armies. They captured people who knew too much, trained children, broke men, erased evidence. The Forge wasn't just a threat. It was a factory of darkness. And now it had noticed Elijah Briggs, back in the field. Elijah knew what he had to do. But this mission was different. He wasn't going to fight alone. This time, he would build a team. He made 5 phone calls, each one to someone who owed him: a hacker from Berlin, a sniper from the Andes, a medic he once pulled out of fire, a drone pilot gone rogue, and an old friend with scars deeper than his own. When they arrived in Grey Ridge, Elijah looked them in the eye. No medals, no glory. We go in, we get the boy, we shut it down. For good. They nodded. The team was in. The infiltration. The forge was hidden in the Nevada desert, deep underground. No GPS, no signal. But Elijah's team had something stronger than satellites: purpose. They landed silently at night, entered through the old mining tunnels, moved like shadows in the dark. Inside, the forge was a nightmare. Cages, experiments, computers with files too dark to describe. And then they found the boy, barely breathing, locked in a cell. When Elijah opened the door, the boy looked up. "You came," he whispered. Elijah picked him up gently. "I always come." The explosion. But the forge wasn't going to fall quietly. Sirens screamed. Guards poured in. Bullets flew. Elijah's team fought like wolves, precise and unstoppable. They moved to the extraction point, carrying the boy and as many prisoners as they could. Then Elijah stayed behind. He placed the charges himself, one in every hallway, every data room, every twisted lab. As the team lifted off in the escape chopper, Elijah pressed the trigger. Boom! The desert lit up. The forge was gone, burned to the ground. A new dawn. Back in Grey Ridge, the boy recovered slowly. He told stories of others still lost. Names, places, codes. Elijah wrote it all down. But he didn't hand it over to the government. Not yet. He had learned the hard way. Not everyone in power can be trusted. Instead, he formed something new. A silent network of protectors, former soldiers, ex-intel officers, people like him. They called it the Watchlight, a quiet force meant to fight the darkness before it spread. At the diner, again, Jenny poured Elijah his coffee. He sat at his usual booth, staring out the window. Reed joined him with a laptop full of new data. "More places to clean," he said. Elijah nodded, one at a time. Jenny smiled softly. "You're not just fighting anymore. You're building something." Elijah looked around the diner, kids laughing outside. The boy he saved drawing pictures at the next table. Peace, even if brief, surrounded them. He took a sip of coffee. "I'm building a world where they don't have to be like me." Jenny stopped mid-sentence. "Did you see that?" Todd looked out. "Who drives around here this late?" Jenny's face paled. Something's not right. Back at Elijah's house, Elijah sat quietly while Reed checked the front door. He placed a sensor at the window and checked his watch. "They're close," Reed said. "They'll come tonight." Elijah stood. His back was straight now. His eyes were clear. "Then let them." He walked to the bookshelf and pulled down an old book. Inside was a hidden pistol, oiled and loaded. He handed it to Reed. "You'll need it more than I will," Elijah said. "No, sir," Reed said. "You're not just a memory. You're still the commander." Elijah didn't smile, but something lit behind his eyes. "You still remember the call sign?" he asked. Reed nodded once. Elijah whispered, "Black Echo." Reed replied, "Shadow Walkers." Silence fell again. Then Elijah said softly, "They killed our brothers, burned the truth, but tonight the truth will walk again." Outside, the wind howled louder. The house creaked. The shadows were coming. But so was something else. The return of a legend. It was a quiet morning in Grey Ridge. The sun was soft, and the streets were calm. Elijah sat at his kitchen table, reading a small letter that had arrived in an unmarked envelope. There was no return address. Inside was a photo. A younger Elijah standing beside a man named Captain Nolan. They had trained together long ago, but Nolan had been presumed dead in a mission gone wrong. The same mission Elijah was blamed for. Beneath the photo were just 4 words. He's still alive. Help. Elijah stared at the photo for a long time. Reed walked in. You okay? Elijah handed him the note. Reed's eyes widened. Captain Nolan. I thought. So did I, Elijah said quietly. Reed sat down. This changes everything. If he's alive, he could clear your name even more. He was the mission leader. Elijah nodded. Or someone's using his name to draw me out. Reed looked up. You think it's a trap? Elijah stood up slowly. I think it doesn't matter. If he's alive, I owe him. If it's a trap, they forgot who I am. Back to the battlefield. Reed made some calls. Old contacts, secret lines, hidden maps. Soon, they had a location. An abandoned facility in the mountains, 2 states away. Long off the grid. No surveillance. No military presence. Perfect for hiding or ambushing. Elijah packed light. 1 bag. 1 old rifle. 1 quiet purpose. Jenny met him at the diner before he left. You're leaving again, she said softly. Elijah looked at her, then nodded. Something from the past called me. She touched his arm. Don't stay in the past too long. You finally belong somewhere now. Elijah gave her a small smile. I'll come back. That's a promise. She handed him a folded napkin. For luck. Inside was a small drawing of the diner with the words, Your seat is waiting. The mountains. The air was cold, sharp, silent. Elijah and Reed moved carefully through the rocks and trees, eyes sharp, footsteps soft. Finally, they reached the old facility. The fence was broken. The windows shattered. Time had forgotten this place. But inside, light. They entered slowly. Rooms full of dust, old equipment, footprints. And then they heard it. A cough. They turned a corner, and there he was, Captain Nolan. Older, thinner, weak, but alive. He looked up and whispered, Briggs. Elijah ran to him. You're alive. Nolan smiled faintly. You came. What happened? Reed asked. Nolan's face darkened. I found out the truth. About Marcos. He had a plan to sell intel. When I tried to stop him, he left me for dead. They kept me hidden here. Elijah clenched his fists. Why didn't they kill you? Insurance, Nolan said, in case someone like you came back. Suddenly, a sound behind them. Footsteps. Reed spun around. We're not alone. The morning after the attack, the town of Grey Ridge felt different. The streets were quiet. People walked slower. Whispers filled the air, soft, careful, and full of questions. Something had happened, and somehow everyone knew it was connected to the old black man who always sat alone in the diner. At the diner, Jenny stood behind the counter, her hands shaking as she poured coffee. Todd walked in, pale and quiet. He didn't joke. He didn't speak. He sat at the corner booth and looked out the window. Then he said softly, was it true? Was he really someone? Jenny looked up. Her voice was firm. He was someone, more than you ever will be. Todd didn't argue. He looked down. A man entered the diner, tall, clean-shaven, wearing a military badge. Jenny narrowed her eyes. Can I help you? The man showed her a photo of Elijah. I'm looking for him. Is he here? Jenny didn't answer right away. Who are you? Major Collins, he said. Internal Affairs. U.S. Army. Retired. Jenny stepped back. He's not here. But even if he was, I wouldn't tell you. Collins didn't get angry. He nodded. I understand. But please tell him. The truth is starting to come out. People are talking. They're remembering. He placed a card on the counter and left. Jenny stared at it. The card had just one word on it: honor. Outside town, Elijah sat near the lake. His old boots rested on the grass. The wind moved gently through the trees. Reed stood nearby, talking on a secure phone. "They've cleared your name," Reed said finally. "All records of betrayal gone. The truth is being restored." Elijah didn't react. Reed stepped closer. "It's over. They know you were innocent. Marcos is dead. His whole network exposed. You did it." Elijah stood up slowly and looked out at the water. "When a name is erased, it's not just words on a file," he said. "It's memory. It's family. It's everything." He looked at Reed. "You think a medal or a speech will fix that?" Reed didn't answer. "I lost brothers," Elijah whispered, "and I spent 30 years eating alone because the world forgot who I was." He picked up a stone and threw it across the water. It skipped once, twice, then sank. "But you didn't forget," he said. Reed's voice was quiet. "No, sir, I never did." Later that day, a local news van parked outside the town library. A woman in a suit stood with a microphone. "Today, something incredible happened in Grey Ridge," she said to the camera. "An old soldier, once erased from history, is being honored once more. His name, Elijah Briggs." The screen flashed with photos, some old, some new. A younger Elijah in uniform. A faded newspaper from decades ago with the headline, "War Hero Missing. Puris Humani Dead." Now the truth was out, and the town that once ignored him now couldn't look away. At the town hall, people gathered in silence. The mayor stepped onto the small stage. He looked nervous. Behind him stood a few veterans, including Major Collins. He cleared his throat. "Today, we recognize a man we failed," he said. "A man who gave everything for this country and was forgotten, lied about, erased." A few people lowered their heads. He never asked for thanks. He never asked for recognition. But today, we give him both. He turned and looked at the door. "Elijah Briggs, please come forward." The door opened. Elijah stepped in, slowly, carefully, not because he was weak, but because the moment was heavy. The room stood still. Some gasped. Others clapped softly. Elijah walked to the front. He looked at the mayor, then at the crowd. "I didn't come for speeches," he said quietly. "I came because someone told me truth still matters." He looked at the flag behind the stage. "Many of my brothers never came home," he continued. "They didn't get a second chance, but I did. So I will speak for them." He paused. The room was silent. "They tried to take my name. But a name doesn't live on paper. It lives in hearts." He turned and nodded toward Reed, who stood in the back. "And in those who never forget." The room clapped. Loud, long. Tears filled many eyes, even Todd's. For the first time in decades, Elijah didn't walk out alone. He walked out a hero. Later that night, Elijah sat on the diner's porch, watching the stars. Jenny brought him a cup of coffee. "On the house," she said. Elijah smiled. "Thank you." She sat down beside him. "You know, you could have left. After everything." Elijah looked at the sky. "I thought about it," he said. "But this town, it's where I buried my silence. Now maybe it's where I'll build something new." Jenny smiled. "You're not alone anymore," she said. And for the first time in a long time, Elijah believed her. Night had fully taken over Grey Ridge. The stars were hidden behind thick clouds, and the moon was just a pale circle behind the mist. The town slept quietly, but something dark was moving through its streets. Black cars, quiet engines, no headlights. Inside one of those cars sat Marcos, the man with the scar. His eyes were sharp and cold. He stared out the window as the car passed through the empty town square. "He still lives here?" he asked. The driver nodded. "Yes, sir. Same house. No visitors, except one." "Who?" "Someone from the old list. Reed." Marcos leaned back in his seat. So the boy survived after all. How touching. The other man in the car asked, "Should we wait for backup?" Marcos shook his head. "No. Elijah's old, broken, and I want to look him in the eyes before we end this." At Elijah's house, inside the quiet home, Elijah sat on the floor with a small box of old items, medals, broken dog tags, and a photo of men who never came back. His hands trembled slightly as he picked up a tag with the name C. Reeves. He closed his eyes. "Forgive me, brother." Reed entered the room quietly. Perimeter set. Motion sensors in place. "We'll hear them before they get close." Elijah nodded. "You ever wonder why I came to this town?" Reed sat down across from him. "To hide." "No," Elijah said. "To remember." Reed frowned. Elijah looked out the window. "After the war, I had no home, no name, but this town gave me silence. I thought maybe silence could heal me, but I was wrong. Silence just made the memories louder." He stood up. "Now, I understand. I wasn't supposed to hide. I was supposed to wait." Reed didn't speak. He could feel the air shift around Elijah, the quiet weight of a man who had been patient for too long. Then the alarm went off. A soft beep from the window sensor. One light flashed red. Reed stood instantly. Movement. West side. Elijah grabbed the box and tucked it under the couch. He walked to the closet and pulled out a long black case. Inside was a rifle, clean and well-maintained. "You still shoot?" Reed asked. Elijah loaded it without answering. From the hallway, the soft creak of a floorboard broke the silence. Both men froze. "Inside already?" Reed whispered. Elijah's voice was calm. "They're professionals. I trained men like them." He aimed his rifle at the door. The silence stretched. Then, crash. The front window shattered. A flash of smoke. Reed coughed as gray gas filled the room. "Gas," he shouted. "Mask up." Elijah didn't panic. He pulled a small mask from under the table and handed one to Reed. The old man moved with purpose, steady and sure. From the smoke, shadows stepped in. 3 of them, dressed in black, silenced weapons, moving like ghosts. But Elijah was ready. Bang! 1 shot. 1 man dropped. The other 2 dove for cover, firing back. Reed rolled behind the kitchen counter and returned fire. A bullet tore through the cabinet beside his head. "Elijah, they're flanking," Reed shouted. "I see them," Elijah growled. Another shot. Another shadow fell. Only 1 left now. Fast, smart, dangerous. Elijah stood and walked forward. The last man aimed, but Elijah's shot hit his hand. He screamed and dropped the weapon. "Don't move," Elijah said coldly. The man gasped, blood on his arm. "Please." Elijah aimed lower. "Who sent you?" The man hesitated. Reed stepped forward, pointing his pistol. "Answer him." The man whispered, "Marcos, he's coming." Elijah's face turned to stone. "Where is he?" "He's close. He wanted to see your face before you died." Elijah lowered his weapon. "Let him come," he said. Reed pulled the wounded man outside and tied him near the porch. Then he returned. "He's close," he said. "You want to leave now? We still can." Elijah walked to the center of the room and sat in his chair. "No," he said. "He took my honor, my name, my brother's." He looked up at Reed. "He will not take my home." An hour later, the wind had died down. The trees stood still, as if holding their breath. Then came the sound, tires on gravel. A black car pulled up slowly. It stopped outside the gate. The door opened. Marcos stepped out. He looked older than Elijah remembered, but his pride was untouched. He wore a black coat, gloves, and a smirk. He walked toward the porch. It was a quiet morning in the small town of Grayridge. The sky was cloudy, and the streets were almost empty. At the corner of Main Street, there was a small old diner called Annie's Place. The bell above the door rang softly whenever someone entered. Inside, an old black man sat alone at a table near the window. His name was Mr. Elijah, but most people didn't know that. They just called him the Old Man. He came to the diner every morning, always at the same time, always to the same seat. He wore an old coat and a brown hat, and he always ordered the same thing: black coffee and a slice of toast. He didn't talk much. He didn't smile. He just sat there, looking out the window, as if waiting for something or someone. Some people felt sorry for him. Others just laughed. "Look at him," said Todd, a man in his early 30s who worked at the hardware store. "Sits there like a statue. I bet he hasn't spoken a full sentence in years." His friend Mike chuckled. "Maybe he forgot how to talk." The waitress, Jenny, frowned. "Leave him alone," she said quietly. "He's done nothing to you." But Todd didn't stop. He picked up his coffee cup and walked over to Elijah's table. "Hey, old man," he said loudly. "You ever think of smiling?" Elijah didn't move. He didn't even blink. His eyes stayed on the window. Todd leaned closer. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue." Jenny rushed over. "Todd, that's enough." But it was too late. Todd accidentally tipped his cup, spilling coffee on Elijah's coat. "Oh no," he said with a fake smile. My hand slipped. The diner went silent. Everyone watched. Elijah looked down at his coat. He slowly reached into his pocket, pulled out a napkin, and wiped it without a word. His face stayed calm. Not angry. Not sad. Just quiet. Jenny's voice trembled. "You should leave, Todd." Todd scoffed. "Whatever. He's just an old man. Alone and useless." He walked back to his seat, laughing. Some people joined in. Others looked away, uncomfortable. The bell above the diner door rang again. A stranger walked in. He was tall, wearing a long dark coat. His boots were heavy. His eyes were sharp, like he had seen many things. Terrible things. He didn't look around like normal people did when they entered a new place. He looked like he already knew who he was here for. The room went quiet again. The stranger stepped forward, one slow step at a time. His eyes moved across the diner until they landed on Elijah. He smiled. "I was looking for a lion," he said softly. "Seems I found him." Everyone turned to look at Elijah, confused. Todd stood up. "Who are you?" The stranger ignored him. He walked straight to Elijah's table. Elijah looked up for the first time. His eyes met the stranger's. There was something in that look. Something strong. Something silent. Something shared. "Do I know you?" Elijah asked quietly. The stranger nodded. "You saved my life once." "Sir, a long time ago. Now it's my turn." Todd laughed. "Saved your life?" "Him. He can barely move." The stranger turned to Todd. His voice was calm, but cold. "Do you know who this man is?" Todd rolled his eyes. "Yeah, he's nobody." The stranger reached into his coat. For a moment, some people held their breath. But he only pulled out a small badge, metal, old, worn from time. "This badge," he said, "was given to soldiers in a place most of you have never heard of. The man sitting here earned it when others ran. He carried broken bodies across fire. He gave up his name to protect others. He is not nobody." The room was still. Elijah looked at the badge and gave a small, tired smile. "You were just a kid," he said. "And you were a legend," the stranger replied. "Still are." Jenny wiped her hands on her apron and whispered, "I knew there was something different about him." Todd looked around, uncomfortable now. "This is crazy." But no one laughed with him this time. The stranger sat down beside Elijah. "They're watching you again," he said in a low voice. They think you're weak now, but they've forgotten." Elijah looked back out the window. "Then let them come," he said. "I'm not alone anymore."